good afternoon, and once again, welcome to Woman on the Rise. I just wanted to come before you and bring you what I read today. Today, I read the book of Ruth, and just to give you kind of a background, the book of Ruth talks about Naomi, who was Ruth and Oprah's mother-in-law. Um, Naomi had lost her husband, and then she had lost her two sons. And in this book, it talks about Naomi telling her daughter-in-laws to go back to their families because they were married to her sons. I'm sorry, and she was letting them know, okay, you can go back home because I have nothing left. I have nothing left. My husband's dead, and now my two sons, your husbands, are dead. So go back to your family. Well, Oprah listened to her, and Oprah decided to go back to her family. But Ruth remained at Naomi's side. Now, the first thing I want you to pay attention to is that when when Naomi asked them to go back to their families, it was because she felt she had nothing left and she was bitter. She was upset because she felt like God had took everything from her, meaning her husband and her two sons. Oprah decided, okay, well, she didn't put up a fight. She was like, okay, and she left to go back to her family. And when I read that, the first thing I noticed was that everybody can't go with you where God is trying to take you. Meaning, some people may walk out your life, some people may leave your lives. And it's okay. It's okay because the journey that God has for you, sometimes it doesn't require that person to be on the same journey as you. I know I've learned that even though I'm divorced twice, I realize now that God had to separate me from those situations. He had to allow me to be separated and divorced for me to get to where I am now. And I heard TD Jake said it, and I always say it too, but I didn't know he said it. But I keep saying God gives me the gift of goodbye. If you want to walk out my life, if you want to leave me, or if you decided that you something's better out there for you, then there's no way I'm gonna stand in the way. It may hurt me, it may cause me a great deal of pain, but I'm not gonna stop you from leaving. And that's what Naomi did with Oprah. Once she told them to leave and Oprah left, then she didn't have any animosity. She didn't have, you know, any ill will towards her because she told her to go back to her family. And sometimes people can't go where God wants to take you, and sometimes some people have to be removed from your life in order for God to use you, in order for God to help you on the journey that He has before you. The second thing I want you to notice is that Naomi was very bitter. She was very bitter because she felt like God had taken everything from her. Don't get bitter when somebody wants to leave your life. Don't get bitter when certain things don't work out the way that you think they should. Don't get bitter when someone decides that you're not good enough or you feel rejected. Don't get bitter because what I noticed in reading this story is that even though Naomi got bitter, God still blessed her. He still blessed her in the midst of her being angry, which lets us know, yeah, we'll go through moments. I know when I got divorced, I went through moments where I was mad. I went through moments where I thought I never would be able to forgive them. I went through moments where I was lonely. I went through moments where I was mad at God because I remember praying to God, and I remember asking God when my marriage, my second marriage ended. I remember praying to God and crying out to God, really, not just praying, but crying out to God and ask God why He didn't save my marriage. Because I was in church, I was teaching, I was doing everything, I was praying for my marriage. So I was doing everything that I thought that I should do to keep my marriage together. So when it ended, I got very angry with God because I couldn't understand why He didn't save my marriage. And I remember the Holy Spirit speaking to me one day, and the Holy Spirit told me that it wasn't that God didn't answer your prayers, but God will never go over another person's will. In other words, if that person is not praying for the same thing that you're praying for, and they decide they want to leave, God will let them leave because He's not going to stop them if that's what they want. God will never stop us from doing what we want, but there's always consequences behind doing things that we want that's not right or that causes another person heartache and pain. And I had to get to the place where I understood that we didn't want the same things. And I knew that long before the marriage ended because of all the struggle I had within the marriage. But I still wanted my marriage to work. So when I got to the place that my marriage had to end, it was because I had started battling depression very bad. And it was like, God is telling me, so you're going to let this relationship kill you. You're going to let this relationship kill you. And I remember thinking, I had enough. I couldn't do it anymore. I didn't want it anymore. Uh, it caused me to do things that I regret, but I still wanted my marriage. But when it got to the place where it was depressing, or I didn't want to face another day of disappointment, then I asked God to remove me from that situation. And sometimes we can ask God to remove us from a situation, and then when He removes us, then the first thing I did was I got upset with God. I got mad because I wanted God to save my marriage. I didn't want my marriage to end. I wanted it to be saved. But here, just like Naomi did, I got bitter. But looking at it now and reading the story tonight, I understand that it was all part of God's plan. It was all part of God's plan to get me where I'm at right now, to get me closer to Him, and to help me to realize that it's okay when somebody leaves your life. It's okay because sometimes where God is trying to take you, that person can't go with you. That person is not meant to go on that journey that you're on. And I realized that. And I'm blessed by it now. But like Naomi, I was upset by it. But now I can truly see why it didn't last. I can truly see that I'm a better person because I'm out of that marriage. I can truly see that I give my all to God because now I'm not worrying about holding on to something or someone that doesn't want to hold on to me. Now I hold on to God because I know God wants to hold on to me. And sometimes He has to put us in a place where we're by ourselves. He has to put us in a place where we recognize that, yeah, you went through hard pains, you went through sorrow, you went through bitterness, you went through unforgiveness. But when you can look back on what you went through and see that God never left you, even in the midst of my storm, God never left me. He never left me because all he did was provided a way of escape for me. And once he provided a way of escape, he started blessing me. He started opening doors for me. He started showing me visions. He started helping me to do this ministry. He helped me to complete my book that I was writing my book even when I was married, but I didn't give my book my all in all. Once I got to a place where I forgiven my ex and I was able to move on, then I was able to sit down, concentrate every day, and complete my book. But if I hadn't have went through that, guess what? I wouldn't have had nothing to write about. My book has several stories in it, several heartaches that I had to face. But I had to go through those things to be able to complete my book. And here Naomi had to go through this heartache that she had. And as I go on to explain it to you, God never left her and he blessed her. He blessed her most so. Number one, the one daughter in law that stayed with her, her name was Ruth. Ruth is the one that stayed by her side. Ruth was the one that refused to leave her. And once her and Ruth went to a town called Bethlehem. Once they went to Bethlehem, then there was this gentleman there named Boaz. Boaz was what they call a kinsman redeemer, meaning he was kin to Naomi's husband. Now, keep in mind that when they went there, they didn't know that Boaz was in this town. They went there because they heard that they were able to get food from there, that the harvest was great. And so they went there looking just to be able to eat. But God knew what was there waiting for them. Just like with me or with you. God knows already what we have to face. And he's already got provision for him. He had provision for him. Even though Naomi was bitter, God still had a provision already set up for them. So when they got there, Naomi told Ruth, okay, go to this certain place where they're gathering grain and harvest and pick up what go there where the servants are picking grain, and you walk behind them and you pick up what's left over. So this is what Ruth did. She went early in the morning, went there, started walking behind them. Boaz noticed her. When Boaz noticed her, he asked some of the people that were working for him, who is this? And they said, oh, she's Naomi's daughter-in-law. Naomi is back in town. She came back here. And so Boaz told him, okay, let her pick as much grain as she need. Keep her safe. Let her be with my servants, and let her pick alongside. In other words, she don't have to walk behind anymore. She don't have to go behind them and pick up what's left over. She can walk with them and pick up as much as she needed. And that right there lets you know that when you get in a place that causes you to be bitter, that causes you to be where you don't have forgiveness for the pain that you suffered, or when you even get to a place that you blame God for everything the difficulties in your life, that it makes you bitter. Know that God is already a step ahead of you. He already knows what's going to happen before you get there. He's already provided a provision for you, even in your bitterness. And I look at that also in our everyday lives. When things don't go our way and we tend to want to get upset and ask God, why? Why me, Lord? Why is all this happening to me? In your bitterness, know that God is already providing provision for you. He's not angry at you because you're bitter, because he wasn't angry at Naomi, because he already knew what he was doing. He knew the path she would have to go on. And he already provided a way of escape for her. He already provided provision for her. She just didn't know that. She didn't understand why she had to go through so much. And she felt like God had left her. But it's so amazing to me that the very thing that when we think that God has left us, or when God is not answering our prayers, we tend to forget that He's an all knowing God, that there's nothing that goes on in our life that God doesn't already know. It said God knows our beginning and He knows our end. So, whatever trial or whatever situation that you may be going through in the midst of your life, know that God has already provided a way of escape for you. And I've learned that the more storms that I have in my life, the more opportunities I get to see God bring me out of it. That's what I'm learning now. The more storms that I've been through is the each time I get to see God do something different. And I get to realize, golly, God, there's nothing that I can bring to you that you haven't already provided a way for me for. And I want you to be encouraged that when people leave you, or when people walk out your life, or if you got people on your job that doesn't treat you fairly, know that don't turn bitter, first of all, against God. Know that God sees everything. He sees everything. And when you least expect it is when He turns up. And I'm a living witness of that, because I can't sit here and say I didn't go through a hard time. I went through a horrible time when my marriage ended. So much so I didn't think that I would be anywhere near where I am now, meaning in my spiritual walk, meaning with my heart change, meaning with my mind change. I never thought I would be right where I'm at right now with the peace of God. The peace that He said that surpass all understanding. And that's so true, because I can't even explain the peace that I have now. But when I was going through it, I was like Naomi. I was bitter. I was upset. Little did I know, like Naomi, God was preparing each and every step for me. Even in the midst of my saddest moments, in the midst of my storm, in the midst of me trying to get my life together and having difficulty after difficulty after difficulty. I mean, my life was rough when my marriage ended. It was hard. It was truly hard on me, not knowing that I had to go through that to get to here. So I say that as an encouragement to you, that when you go through things, don't think God has forgotten about you, or that God is punishing you, or that God is not paying attention to you. Know that He's setting your life up for a blessing. I've heard it said, the more favor on your life, the more devils in your lives. Meaning, the more chaotic things happen in your life, the more storms happen in your life. Because Satan don't want you to get to the part where God is able to bless you. Satan don't want you to get to the point where you can be used by God. So he'll bring all kind of difficulties in your life. He'll bring all kind of things in your life to make you think that, like Naomi, you become bitter. Well, he's not listening to me no way. So I'm going to do what I want to do. And I was at that point too. I did what I wanted to do because I felt like God wasn't answering my prayers. And I really did become bitter. Don't let your bitterness make you miss your blessings. Don't let the storms in life make you miss your blessings. Know that God is preparing you for something that you can't even imagine. Because even though I'm on here, even though I have a website, even though I have a book, I still know it's bigger things that God has in store for me. I know it. I can't explain it, but I know it. And I look at everything I went through in my life from childhood to grown up. Everything I went through in my life, I had to go through it to get me here. Just like Naomi had to go through losing her sons and losing her husband to get to where she could go to a town where her kinsmen, we call it kinfolk, her kinsmen would be there to bless her. Because if she hadn't lost those things, she would have still been in Moby. That's where they were. She would have still been there. She wouldn't have went to Bethlehem. She would have stayed where she was if she hadn't lost her husband and her sons. So because she lost those things, she went to Bethlehem. And guess what? That's where her blessing was. Her blessing was right there. You know, I was listening to someone talk this morning. I don't know if it was Tony Evans or who it was, but I was listening to someone talk this morning and say, God knows how to turn your mess into a message. And that's what he does. That's what he does if we allow him to. If we allow him to help us along the way. One thing I can say, even in my bitterness, even in my saddest moments, I never stop praying. I never stop praying. There were moments that I didn't want to pray, but when I didn't want to pray, I still felt myself calling out to God, asking him to help me, asking him to deliver me from the anger I had, from the unforgiveness I had, from the bitterness I had. I remember asking God to forgive me and also to relieve me of that. Help me to let go. And he did that. I remember driving, I shared it with my friend. I remember driving one day to work and it just hit me. And I was like, oh my God, I'm finally over him. I'm no longer mad. I'm no longer angry. But I would always pray for him too. That was another thing I did. I kept him in prayer. And I think that's what made it easier for me to forgive him because no matter what happened, I still wanted the best for him. I still wanted to be able to forgive him. And I still wanted God to protect him. So even in the midst of everything, I still prayed for him. I still lifted him up to God. And that's when I was able to let go. And like I say, one morning I was riding to work and it just hit me. Wow, I'm finally over him. I'm finally over him. And it was such a huge burden lifted off me. It was such a huge heartache removed. But it was removed because, like I said, I prayed for him. I asked God to help me to forgive him. I asked God to help me to forgive myself because I wasn't perfect. By no means was I perfect. I asked God to help me to forgive myself. And once I was able to do that, because it took me a long time before I was able to pray for him, but once I was able to do that, then that's when my life started changing. That's when I could see God and not get angry. That's when I can hear from God because I was no longer walking around angry. I was no longer walking around hurt. So I said all that hopefully to encourage someone because, again, Naomi was bitter. She was angry. But even in the midst of that, God still provided for her. He still made a way so that she could be blessed after everything she had been through, after everything that she had lost. God blessed her, even in the midst of her anger. In her anger, He still blessed her. So my prayer tonight is if you hold anything against someone, ask God to help you to forgive that person. If someone has hurt you, has left you, has walked out your life, rejected you, ask God to help you to forgive them and forgive yourself for anything that you may have done that played a part in the whole thing. Because I can truly say I'm a better woman now because of what I went through and because of God, because what He's delivered me from, and because of what He's shown me. And that's just not showing me blessings after blessing. That's not even what it's about. It's about watching Him change my heart, watching Him change the way I felt, watching Him remove unforgiveness from my heart. So if you're struggling in that sense, if you're having difficulties forgiving someone, ask God to help you. Ask God to help you to remove that hurt. Because I not only went through the hurt of cheating and all that, I went through feeling rejection. I mean, I went through some stuff. I went through some stuff. But thanks be to God, I still sometimes may not in that situation because the marriage part, no, I'm so over that. But I may go somewhere like on my job. If somebody says something to me, I may still feel like, oh my God, why are they rejecting me? So I'm still praying about certain areas in my life. I'm not there yet, but I have overcome the part of the marriage that failed. I have overcome that. And I thank God for that. So I just wanted to come on here, share that message with you. And just like I say, if there's anything in your life that you hold heartache, rejections, unforgiveness, ask God to remove those things out of your life. Because with those things in your life, you're blocking what God is trying to do. You're blocking. If I would have stayed in that and not ask God to remove those things from me, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at right now. My walk would be totally different because I would still be walking around like bitter, angry, unforgiveness. All those things blocks God from what he wants to do in your life. So you have to be able to ask God to remove those things. And when you pray, ask God to show you if there's anything in you or if you have anything against someone that you feel has done you wrong, and ask God to reveal them to you so you can start praying about being able to forgive them and start praying for them. Because trust me, I'm sure they need their prayers. Everyone needs prayer. So I come on here to share that word. And again, the book is not long. I think it's like 4 chapters in Ruth. Um, but it shows us how faithful God is to us. Just like Oprah left, when people want to leave, get the gift of goodbye. Bye. Bye. Don't worry about it because everybody can't go with you on your journey. And trust and believe, if it was meant to be, it would have been. If it was meant to be, they wouldn't have never left. So if they left, that means God don't have the journey that you on. They're not part of that journey. So I said all that in hoping that I can bring this story to you to ask you to search your heart. If there's any bitterness in your heart, if there's any unforgiveness in your heart, ask God to remove that so he can bless you. Because those things have to be removed in order for God to move you forward. I want to thank you once again. I was on here 32 minutes, y'all. Sorry. Um, I want to thank you once again for tuning in. I want to also ask you, and I'll continue to ask you to please share my videos. Please share my videos because I truly believe that this word may not be for you, but it may be for someone else that needs to hear it. So I ask you to share it. If you've already subscribed to it, I appreciate you. If you need prayer, again, put it in the comments. Let me go before God and pray for you. And also, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Like my videos. Comment if you feel like commenting. Only if you feel like it. But I want to thank God for you tonight. And I pray that something I said in this message uplift your spirits. I pray that something I said in this message helps you to remove things in your life that may be causing you to block your blessings. And bitterness is something that will cause you not to receive your blessings. You can't walk around bitter and angry and unforgiveness and expect God to do something in your life. So, on that note, I want to thank you for tuning in. And once again, I pray that you have a blessed night. May God bless you and keep you. Good night. Bye.